Todd Boehly's Chelsea have been exploiting the sales of homegrown talents to get around FFP. In the 2 years of owning the club, the sales of Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Lewis Hall, Hudson-Odoi, Ian Matson, Ethan Ampadu, Billy Gilmore have all been prevalent in funding Chelsea's transfers, as well as the likely sales of Trevor Chalobah, who's been mistreated poorly, Conor Gallagher potentially, as well as Armando Broja this summer. That's been something that's been lobbied at Chelsea's owners throughout their tenure so far. And make no mistake, I think it's important to clarify my stance on their ownership of Chelsea Football Club in that it's been a mess. They've taken over a club that were third, that were champions of the world, and we've come 12th and 6th. You'd have to be absolutely clueless not to think something's gone wrong there. But attacking this ownership for selling homegrown players as a sign of how detached they are from the club and using that reasoning as a means to weaponize and attack this ownership is very flawed in my opinion, because make no mistake about it, Roman Abramovich was doing the exact same. And now we all love, look, Roman as a Chelsea fan. Naturally, he gave us the best memories of our lives. But let's not kid ourselves for 1 minute as if Roman wasn't using the academy effectively in a very similar manner. In the years just prior to the acquisition of Chelsea Football Club by Clearlake, we sold Mark Gahey, we sold Fikayo Tomori, we sold Tammy Abraham, we let Christensen go on a free, Musiala escape from our clutches. We had multiple homegrown players just leave in recent years under that ownership. Why did we not give a shit at the time? Because we were successful. And this goes back further than that. We're not talking about players, Scott Sinclair couldn't have been a better squad player maybe than Cuadrado at the time? Of course he could have. Or Patrick Van Aanholt as a decent backup left back, maybe even Ryan Bertrand. And yet we let those players go. Why? Because they looked good on the books. Because they were good sales. But we didn't care because we were winning leagues, we were winning cups. And that's the biggest issue. That's what we should be criticising this ownership for. It's the fact that Chelsea are not in a successful state. But people want to throw the homegrown sales as a way of attacking them. No. Attack them because we've been crap. Don't attack them for things that were present before. You just wanted to ignore them, or it was easy to ignore them because we were successful. Colton Cole, for example, was a decent youth player that broke through. We ended up selling Colton Cole and having Claudio Pizarro. Claudio Pizarro was rubbish, but no one cared because Chelsea were good. At the time, no one was sat there going, Roman Abramovich is a disgrace selling Colton Cole and our homegrown players. In fact, one thing that was levied at Chelsea, despite our success throughout our successful era, our most successful periods, was the fact we weren't playing youth players. We weren't using the academy. But we as Chelsea fans, in general, didn't care all that much because what we were seeing on the pitch was great. The trophies we were lifting most years was great. People can throw around these things without thought. They can call them a delectable medley of footballing fuck-ups or whatever they want to say. But the reality is they haven't even thought about these things for 2 minutes, because another thing that's also thrown at them is not just the fact that they're selling these common products, it's the fact that what they're bringing in. They're bringing in these unproven young players just because they want to sell them so they look good on the books for profit. And there's a good potential that happens. I mean, even Amari Hutchins, someone who was acquired from Arsenal's academy, has just gone for over 20 million, which helps balance the books. This is something that was still very much a part of Roman Abramovich's time. Courtois and De Bruyne, both bought from Genk, both went for heavy profit. Lukaku, brought in from Anderlecht, went for heavy profit. These are sales that were actually criticised because of what they went on to become, but realistically, we were doing the same thing then. Scouts would bring in a player a bit cheaper, we sell them high. That's kind of how getting around buying big players works, and that's what they're trying to do, particularly at the moment where we don't have proper European football. I know we've got Conference League this year, but Chelsea want to be in the Champions League, and Roman Abramovich, luckily enough, we were in that most years. But in order to balance those books, we did have to find ways around that. We did have to sell homegrown players. We did have to buy players cheap and sell high. Juan Mata is a great example. 2-time player of the year at Chelsea, but we got a good offer. Mourinho wasn't using it, and after 6 months, he was out the door. He went to Man United, but we made money on him. And those weren't sales that everyone agreed with at the time by any means, but Roman also did run it like a business to a different degree, a business that had a lot more success on the pitch, and that's what we want as Chelsea fans. That's what we're lacking as Chelsea as a football club, and that's why there should be anger directed towards those owners in that sense. When we're looking at aspects of this dark attitude towards the academy, that they don't want that, whatever, Levi Colwill was given a big new deal. Reece James is made captain. We do still have that on the pitch, and realistically, if we call a spade, if it weren't for that transfer ban where we lost Hazard and Super Frank came in, your Reece Jameses, your Mason Mounts, your Fikayo Tomori's, your Tammy Abrahams, Billy Gilmore's, maybe Reece breaks through because he was that good. The other guys probably wouldn't have got a go. under the Roman Abramovich era. And this is not me knocking Roman, by the way. Roman was the best owner we could have. Like I said, he gave us memories I will remember till I'm brown bread. But this wasn't something that was lacking in the Roman Abramovich era that's just become apparent now. It's just that people have started using it as a stick to beat these current owners with. Like even we were buying like Papi Gilaboggi for 2 million and then flipping him for 8 the following year. Marco Van Hinkel, what was he bought for? I know he ended up having his injuries. He was bought initially for profit, let's be real. And if he's great, awesome. Then you've got a player on your hands. If not, you sell for profit. That's the same as what these guys are doing now. So I find it really weird criticising them specifically for this when it's something that was apparent for Chelsea for years. Even Jody Morris was let go as Roman came in. And whether that was agreed before, so under Ken Bates, or under Roman, it doesn't matter. They were letting academy players go then. This is not some new concept, but for some people, it's an easy way to attack them, and I think it's massively flawed. And like I said, it doesn't take digging up a lot of dirt just to work out. Even in the recent years, your Tammys, your Tamoris, your Gahys, or whatever, they were sold. They were sold under Roman. That wasn't long ago. They were also sold to balance books to bring in Lukaku for 100 million. Okay, so let's see what these young players turn into, especially the ones they've invested heavily in, your Casados, your Enzos, whatever, right? Those players are bought for us to be better now. There are also young players bought for us to be better in the future. And there are also young players that aren't going to be quite that level and will be sold for profit. And that is something that's been a part of Chelsea for a long time. So let's not pretend this is some new concept. And it's something that will be prevalent in a lot of clubs going forward. Parma is a perfect example in terms of someone we've acquired. Probably a big factor in that deal is that City think that's a lot of homegrown profit, and realistically we're not going to move anyone else off the books. The guy wants to go, he wants to play first team football, let's just take it. And that's their mistake. That's their De Bruyne Salah moment that we've had in the past. I haven't even mentioned Nathan Ake. Nathan Ake is at City now. He's a good player. He was a good player at Bournemouth. In fact, he was a good player at Chelsea under Antonio Conte in particular. But we sold him. Why? Because it was good profit. It was good homegrown profit. And that was under Roman Abramovich. Dom Solanke. Solanke was back in how many goals last year in the Premier League? Guess what? Sold under Roman. You know, it's not alien news. This isn't something brand new. This has been happening for a long time. Get it in your heads, you idiots. It is quite literally just a means of beating a dead horse. It is quite literally a means of coming at owners through anger towards the lack of success at Chelsea Football Club at the moment and the cohesion across the board. And I get that. I fully get that. I agree with that. Like I said, it's important to note, I don't sit there loving these owners and loving everything they're doing, but if I'm going to sit there and criticise perhaps their mishandling of that, I don't like the treatment of Trevor Chalobah. I think he should be on a pre-season tour. Why wouldn't he be? He's a decent player. But selling him? I mean, I think Fofana and Cole were better centre-backs. You could argue Chalobah's definitely better than a Disasi or a Badiashile. If you want to argue that, I think you've got a case for it. But they bring in Tosin on a free. They see Chalobah. It's a good way of balancing the books. I don't think that's something that Roman wouldn't have done. We're acting like this is something only they would do, and it really isn't. And it's something that will catch on more and more in football, like I said, because with FFP, this is what's flawed. Chelsea's treatment of the youngsters, you can argue, it will put off youngsters in the future. Okay, maybe Reece James as captain wouldn't. Maybe how Levi Cole was going to be a big part of Chelsea wouldn't. So I don't know about that. But what I do know is this is definitely a method that clubs are going to utilise to get around FFP and build up their balance sheets. That is quite simply that. And it's been the case for a long time. And I don't like people pretending that it's not. Be negative when it's warranted. You might want to keep some of these players. Connor's a good player. Connor has had a really decent season for Chelsea last season. I understand people's uproar if they don't want to lose a player like Conor Gallagher of his calibre. But if he goes for a big fee and Dewsbury Hall's a good player and they're getting others and they've got a jam-packed midfield as it is, obviously Lavia coming back into the fray as well, you could understand it. A lot of people don't want to understand. They just want a direct anger. They want that negativity. And I just don't think in all cases it's fully warranted at all. Particularly in pretending this is some new thing. It's really not. Like I said, you've got your Akes, you've got your Abrahams, you've got all those players. And this was under a different ownership. Like the Christensen and Musiala one, I get they're a bit messy, but realistically they could have signed Christensen up to a new deal. They probably mistreated him in that regard. Musiala, he chose to leave. Like that's not a new concept. Players will choose to leave if they want to. Youth players might want to go play for another club. And that's what happened with that kid going to Liverpool recently. And everyone's losing their mind. It's like, it happens, all right? We weren't all crying in 2010 or 2011, whenever it was, when Michael Mancien was leaving, or Scott Sinclair, or any of these players, because we were successful. What's important is that Chelsea is successful on the pitch, and that needs to follow. That's where my eyes are. That's where every Chelsea fan's eyes should be. If their business is something you might not completely agree with, Okay, let's hope they've got the right people in charge that know more than us, because I'm sat here recording a video on a screen. I'm not being employed by Chelsea Football Club to scout out the next best players or work out what's good business football-wise, and neither are you. We're all fans, but realistically, Roman made ruthless decisions in that regard, and you might regret some of them. You'll regret selling a De Bruyne or whatever, but hopefully you've brought in enough Hazards, you've brought in enough Costas and Fabregases that it won't matter, because you'll be enjoying what's going on the pitch in that regard. In my opinion, until FFP is altered rule-wise, this will only increase in clubs across the globe selling their homegrown players. If they count on the balance sheet for X amount more than others, naturally they're going to be an easier sale. Naturally they're going to be a sale that pricks the ears up of any businessman, where they're looking at thinking, okay, well, if we sell one of him, we can actually bring two of him in. That's what's wrong. Like, a system that is designed to stop clubs from hoarding players, etc., that actually encourages hoarding and resale, it encourages getting rid of boys from your academy, that's flawed. It's an understandable thing for clubs to be exploiting to be able to buy more in the present, but it doesn't make it right. That's what needs looking at, not Chelsea's methodology and this idea that Bowley did this. That does my head in as well. Right. Another thing that people want to weaponise is the idea that Bowley's running everything. Todd Bowley's already announced at Chelsea. He's in the background. He was the face originally of this whole thing. Eghbali's the one stepping in for all these deals. When Stanley and Stewart are the ones that are orchestrating lots of these sales and deals, Todd Bowley's in the background. He's announced he'll be stepping down in a year. He's not... but yeah, it's lobbied at him. It's senseless. And at the end of the day, it's just a lack of research into it, or it's just not knowing enough about the club. Genuinely, that is what it comes down to ultimately. It's just anger misdirected and not knowing enough about the details of why you're angry. You're angry because we've been crap. You're angry because we're on manager number 67 in their time, their misappointments, the fact that they got rid of a guy that all the fans loved, the fact that they put in guys that the fans didn't love and didn't agree with and didn't think were very good, and proved to be the case. That's what you're angry at. You're angry at things on the pitch where we could be better. You're angry at missed chances. You're not angry so much just at the homegrown stuff. I get it. Like, I want homegrown players to succeed, and some of them I think could be good enough, definitely good enough to be squad players, and that's where I am a bit conflicted in terms of decision to sell, I don't know, a Trevor, a Connor, etc. But at the same time, I can understand it. Even someone like Mason Mount, that we loved at the club, especially those first couple of years, did start to tail off, did start to get injuries, and look what he's doing at United now. At the moment, it's looking like 60 million, very well sold. Particularly if we'd kept him for a year, he didn't sign a new deal, we lost him on a free anyway, and he didn't even play any football last year. So let's assess everything before we think what we're angry about. Let's not just throw negativity out there where it's not completely warranted. Let's have a think about whether this has always been the case. And it has. This was the case. The thing that wasn't the case was Chelsea being dog shit consistently under Roman. We had 15, 16, 17, 18 wasn't great, etc. The Champions League winning year was weird. Like, we come sixth, we won FA Cup and Champions League. Like, we had sporadic weird moments, but we didn't have consistently. We never had 2 years out of Champions League, which we have under this ownership, and that's a problem that needs addressing. That's a problem that needs addressing in the now. We need to be back in the Champions League, lads. That's what Chelsea need to be. We don't need to be worrying about whether a 15-year-old went to Liverpool. That can happen. Like I said, Musiala did that. He literally did that. And the idea they're all going to be worried about their pathways. We do have players in the first team. More than we did in a lot of Roman's teams. Because Roman's teams just had JT. JT was the only one there. No one else was breaking through. Josh McEachran started kicking the ball around a little bit. Like I said, Ake had bits and pieces. Thomas Callas, Mourinho played him in a backup game. He never did anything. We ended up selling him. It's not something that's been massively prevalent. It was only prevalent when that transfer ban happened. And realistically, it probably wouldn't have been the case otherwise. So we're lucky that Frank brought a lot of those players through. And a lot of those players served us well in terms of sales as well. You wouldn't bring Tammy back. But we sold him at a good price. Good memories in that first year. Wasn't quite good enough. Mark Gay, he's had a great Euros. Good on him. We did sell him at a good price. I like Cole. Fofana's never bloody fit, but if he can stay fit, he's a good centre-back there. So, let's put the swords away for a second, all right? Let's get excited. We've got some good players. We've got a lot of young players that are going to get better. And I'm excited about that as a Chelsea fan. You should be excited about that as a Chelsea fan. We've got fucking Cole Palmer. We've got Cole Palmer. We got Reece James back. He's played some games. He's played some minutes. Lavia, he's literally like a new signing, and Kunku feels like a new signing. Fofana, I believe, feels like a new signing. We signed 2 years ago. There are reasons to be excited about Chelsea Football Club. Jackson's a good player. Let's see what we do in the rest of the window. Let's see what our manager's like. He looks like Pep. He might be Pep. Who knows? Let's see. I'm less sold on that one, but hopefully I get sold throughout the season and we have a very successful one. So there's reason to be optimistic. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom and negative the whole time, as much as people want to package it as that. So yeah, up the Chelsea, guys. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe. All that stuff helps me out a lot. I'm looking forward to the new season. How high do you think we can go? And where's the ceiling for Chelsea this season? What do we think? What do we reckon? Anyway, in a bit, guys.